Good morning, everybody. This is Keith from Dirty Data. Today I wanted to show you one of my favorite applications, Power BI. Power BI is only two and a half years old. It's created by Microsoft. If you are familiar with Excel, Power Query, Power Pivot, this will be much easier for you to jump into because it uses a lot of the same functionality as those two. But Power BI, like I said, it's relatively new, so it is constantly being updated. They release new development updates every month, and some of those changes are quite far-reaching. So you really need to stay on top of what Microsoft is doing. As a matter of fact, if you really get into Power BI and you want to write the exam for it, it's still in beta. So you can write the exam and get your certification, but until it comes out of beta, Microsoft doesn't release the certificates. I'm actually preparing to write the exam anytime, I think. I think I'm ready, but there's really no rush until Power BI comes out of beta because you can't get your certification. Having said that, what is Power BI? Well, it's a business analytics service. As I said, it's provided by Microsoft. The way that Microsoft actually describes it is they say interactive visualizations with self-service business intelligence capabilities. So let's break that down. Self-service is really the key word, well, interactive visualization as well. So instead of just having a visualization where you would in Excel or PowerPoint, these now become interactive. That's the big word you want to take away from this. And then the other one is self-service. Self-service meaning that an end user, in theory, could come in here, create a report or a dashboard by themselves and publish that so other users can access it. And they don't have to use IT or the DBAs to do it for them. That's a little easier said than done just because of the some of the querying complexities. If you want to get into any kind of time management or any trending or anything like that, I wouldn't say that this just any end user could pick this up. You'd have a little bit of work to do, but it's certainly getting better and better all the time. So let's dive in really quickly to what Power BI is and what it can do for you. So this is a dashboard that I've created for this demo purpose. Consumer goods and sales. I put a little title in here. I've got my little logo over here. You can click these and just drag them around. I have the customer names for our consumer goods and sales. And once again, you can see I can just click on this, move it to where I want. Here's all of the different customers I can scroll across. I've created some calculations that provide you with the total sales for 2015, 2016, average sales per day, total units sold, average units sold per day. And then here now we actually have some interactive charts. So here we have total sales by product description, and you can see as I just hover my mouse over this, this will tell you that Brittle has $856,000 worth of sales for the 2 years. And you can scroll through and you can see it changes as you hover over it. Then we have total sales by region, Western and Eastern. We have total sales by distribution channel, whether that is a distributor, it's exports, wholesale, or whatever. And once again, you can hover over any of these and see the totals for those. Then over here at the bottom, we have total sales by date and year. So this would start in January 2015, and it just shows our total sales trending across. And then up here, we have our map. This is actually a Bing map. It's interactive. I can click on it. I can drag it around. I can zoom in and out. I can zoom in and out. There we go. It's a little slow. And yeah, this will actually show, if I hover over Alberta here, you'll see that my total sales for the 2 years there was just about 1,100,000. If you have more detailed maps, as far as like if you have city names, even in the oil and gas sector, this will do latitude and longitude. So you can actually plot a lot of the information on here, like wells and stuff like that. You can zoom right in, and this would actually show you different cities and some of the analysis in those cities. I could hover over Edmonton, for instance, and see that. Yeah, so it's really neat. It's one of my favorite tools in BI. And then we have some buttons here, 2015, 2016, the months, the provinces, and then I went through that. Okay, so here's the idea with Power BI. Where normally most users would think of this as something that you would either print off or email a copy of this report. Now this report can actually be shared with the end users, with management, with any of the key stakeholders. Instead of just sending them a flat file or a hard copy, you send them this through, you share it to a cloud basically, and then they interact with it through a web browser. So before I start interacting with this, let's do that, and then you'll see it in a web browser instead of in this development mode where I can kind of hover over and you can see all the boxes. So we're going to publish this. I don't know if I made any changes, so I'll save it first, and let's publish. So this is going to send this presentation to the cloud. Select, and then this is loading it. I already have it up there from testing this, so we'll just say replace, and you'll see that this is spinning as it publishes. Success. And then it gives you a few options here. We're going to open consumer goods and sales. All right, so now you'll notice that this is opening in a web browser. So Firefox, which is just my default web browser, has opened. And now here's the same presentation, but as I move around, notice that all those little boxes aren't there anymore. And this is much closer to what a stakeholder or management or an end user would get. And here's the magic of Power BI. When I select any of the tools in this form, you can now see them interact. So if I click on the 21st Limited, this will update, and you will see that the data all across here has updated with just their information. You can see that they are only sold through a distributor. You can see their Western and Eastern. You can see these totals adjust for the product. You can see like how sporadic some of their sales are, right? It's not really consistent for these guys. You can multi-select just by holding down Control. Get more than one group there. So now I'm seeing the totals for these three. And then to clear this, there's the only way to clear it right now through where Microsoft has given us is we can just unselect everything and then it will return back to normal. It's kind of a pain. There's a little hack that you can do. I'll show you here if I can find it. The bookmarks pane. You can actually create a bookmark, which is kind of cool, where let's go ahead and set a couple of these. So now I'm looking at the changes for these four. And if I had a bunch of this other stuff selected as well, it's a real pain to go through and unselect each one. But you can create a bookmark where there are no filters selected, and then by clicking on that bookmark, it actually resets all the filters. So by clicking this Reset Filters bookmark, it actually takes me back to the original point. It's kind of a hack, I suppose. It would be nice if Microsoft actually added a clear all filters at some point in the future. But let's continue on with our interactivity. I can go over here, and if I just want to see information for toffee, I can click that, and this tells me my total sales, my average sales per day, all this information for toffee only. Once again, in the trending, we can see where toffee is distributed. We can I think we can multi-select. Yep. Yeah, you can multi-select. And reset filters. You can choose just to see your Western and your Eastern sales. And then once again, wholesale, club, all of that. Let's reset once more. We can choose 2015. (2016). For some reason 2015 does not want to click. There we go. just slow, just the browser, just catching up. And then you can actually choose your month. So now I'm looking at 2015, January, and these are all my totals. Then you can even go further than that. You can click on the map, or you can click on this legend down here, and we can just see for Alberta. So now I'm looking at January 2015 for Alberta. So you can imagine the power of this when you send this out to a manager, for instance, that really is looking for your trending, instead of them coming back and saying to you, you know, I need to know, you know, what this company's done over the last year, but just this company, you sent me everything. You know, now they can interact with this and really get the information that they require. It's really, really, really cool. Now, here's a little bit more advanced, and this will really show you some of the amazing features that this can do. So not only can I, as an end user, go in and interact with this, but what if I'm really interested in, you know, one of these companies here? What if I click on Burt's Corp, for instance, and something about this doesn't seem right to me? I want some more details about Burt's Corp. I can right click, go to drill through, customer details, and now this opens up this little panel for Burt's Corp. I can see here and scroll down all of the purchases that were made. I can see they bought fudge January 7th, how many, the price, the total sales. Scroll all the way through and see all of the information for Burt's Corp. I've created a little KPI over here. You can see that the goal for each of the companies is 2%. They're only at 1, so this shows up in red. I'll go back and show you another customer and see if we can get their KPI into green. So once you've had a look at this and you've seen the information for Burt's Corp, you can simply click back and it will return you here. Let's go and see if we can find another customer that's doing a little better for us. And they're still failing in their goal. Last one. There we go. This guy's goal is 2%. They're at 2.17, so this flashes green. These KPIs are super cool. Very popular. Really looks good on a dashboard. Just the red and the green showing you whether, you know, goals are met or not met. You can do traffic lights. There's so many different options that you can do. I'll show you one more drill through. So let's say that you're also interested in these products and you'd like some further information there. You're interested in this chocolate truffle information. You can right click again, drill through product details. And now we've opened up chocolate truffle, and we can take a look here and see for each month, their unique orders, their total units sold, and all of the information that you might want to find that couldn't necessarily be presented succinctly in this sales summary. Okay, so before we end this video, one of the things that I would like to do is just do a quick deep dive into some of the guts of Power BI, show you how we get the data and how the data ends up in this presentation mode. I'm not going to go into any crazy detail. It's just going to be really basic, but once again, just to give you an idea of how the insides of Power BI works. So let's say that we wanted to get some data that we were eventually going to put in one of these dashboards. Let's just start there, and we'll go to Get Data at the top here. Click that, and it gives you some standard options. I'll show you if we click More. It'll open up a dashboard like this, and here are all of the different data sources that Power BI can import from and use. So we have Excel, we have a bunch of text files, we have, of course, Access Database, SQL Server, Oracle there. We have Azure, there's Google Analytics somewhere there, Facebook, MailChimp, whole bunch of really cool ones. And the list goes on and on, they're always adding to it. But for us, we're going to go with plain old boring Excel. I'm going to click Connect. And we are going to use Consumer Goods Sales Canada. I've already used this one, but let's just bring it in anyway. And say Open. This is going to open up a little dashboard for us, and it's going to show us all of the tables and the sheets that were in that spreadsheet. And just by clicking on it, you can get a preview of the data. I think there's a couple in here that are a little dirty. So let's just see what we can find. This one has some nulls, so let's bring this one in. We'll check it off. So you select the one that you want, then you have the option to load or edit. Load will bring in the data as is into the Power BI desktop. Edit will invoke the query function, and that's what I want to show you. So here's the query function for the data that we just selected to import. Now it's called it over here. These are all of the different queries that we've brought in. It's called it client budgets -2. So let's just double click on that and let's call it demo 1. And I see we've got another demo. You can actually just remove these by right clicking on it and just clicking delete. So we'll get rid of this old one. So we're back to here. So let's take a look at this data and just get an idea of what we would need to do to clean it. So what's really cool about this query editor is that the data that it manipulates is done non-destructively. So let's edit a call. Let's get rid of some of these null values first, and then I'll show you how that works. So as I go through here, and I have a quick look at my data, I can just click my drop down, just similar to Excel. I can sort by ascending or descending, or I can select specific names. I'm just going to sort. And this looks pretty clean to me. It tells me now there's 4 columns, 38 rows, 38 rows. Doesn't look like there's any weird duplicates or anything like that. It only looks like the problem with this is it's brought in a couple of blank columns. So let's just get rid of those. So I'm going to just select the ones that I want to get rid of. So one, and then I'm going to hold Control and select the other one. And then up here you will see that there is a remove columns. In the home, manage columns, remove columns. If I click down here, I have 2 options. I can remove the other columns. So if you want to remove a whole bunch of columns, there's only like 3 you need, and you just want to get rid of everything else, that's really handy. But for us, we're just going to choose remove columns, and those are gone. Now, here's what I want to show you about the non-destructive portion. If you go over to applied steps for this query, you will see that it has a step-by-step process of how this query was brought in. Now, if I go to the beginning and I click source, I'll see up here that it will show me where the source of this data came from. So Excel workbook, the contents are from the H drive. This is the name of the Excel file that it brought in. And then I can step through these applied steps. Here I'm going to navigation, and this is just telling me that it used the client budgets item, and that item was a sheet and not a table. It then went in and it promoted some headers and changed their type. So what it did was it realized that delivery name, client budget, and these guys, what their names were, and it set them as headers, and then it changed their type to a number and an any and a text. So if we go over here and we look to the right or the left of those columns, delivery name, you see here ABC, that's for text. Here is 1.2, and that is for a decimal number. And by clicking on it, you can see you can actually change the type of column. So if I wanted to go in here and select this and change this to a decimal number, it will say, oh, I see. I don't want to do that, because then I would be inserting a step in the middle here, and I do not want to do that. So I'm just going to say no, because we're going down these steps. So then it sorts the rows. That was when I clicked this arrow here, and then we remove the columns. Right? So now would be the time if I needed to change any of these to make those changes. Not when I'm stepping through, because if I put another change somewhere in here, it might blow this whole thing up. Let me show you why. Actually, it's kind of interesting. If you go into Advanced Editor, now don't freak out if you don't know any code or anything like that. I'm just showing you what this is doing is, let me back up here. As I step through here, you see this line here that we were talking about, this line, and then the navigation line, and then the promotion headers line. This is just an amalgamation of each line, right? So here's where we inserted it. There's that H. So here's the whole thing. And then the last part is we sorted the rows, and here's where we removed those columns. So if I went in somewhere in the middle here and I made a change, it would populate it somewhere in the middle of all of this text. And one of these other changes might rely on something that's further up, and if it doesn't have it because you inserted something in the middle, you could blow this thing up. So if you're going to make additional changes, always make sure that you are at the last step. It's probably a little bit too advanced, but doesn't hurt to know. So I'm done. I like the data. It looks good. I'll just quickly show you up here some of the other options that you've got. So you can, as you saw, we can remove columns. We can keep rows and remove rows. You can remove the top, the bottom, alternating rows. You can remove any duplicates that show up. You can remove anything that's blank. You can remove anything that's flagged as an error. You can sort. You can split your column. So if you have a delimiter in here, do you want me to split this? I don't know if I could split this. Do you want to try? Let's try. I'm going to set this to, let's see, will it let me set this to text? Yeah. Okay, let's try this. And then, so I'm going to try to split this as a text column. I'm going to split it where the period is. Let's see if that works. So we will say split by delimiter. And I'm going to say, oh, it recognized that there's a decimal or period in there. And each occurrence of the delimiter. And let's just say okay here. Just so you can see what happens. So do you see what it did? It actually took everything that was before. And actually, let's go back. So let's look at this one, 72256, right? If I turn this off, so there, and the split. So there's 72256, and then the 464007. And if I split the column again, let's just do it again. Watch this one get split. So now what was outside of the decimal moved over here, and what was to the left of the decimal moved here. You would never do this, but I'm just explaining how split columns works. And I'm going to remove the change type as well. That's back to a number now. You can group by, so you can group different rows based on their values. And let's just move a couple more. You can actually, you could promote your first row as headers. I know how I can show you that. If you can also transpose, so if you can move, you can actually flip this data. So if I go transpose, see how it flipped all of the data across now? And now I've got all these columns as my headers. And here in this row 1, I actually have all the names of the companies. So here now I can use first row as headers. And it promotes those. So now I have a column for each company and their values. So you might want to use that in a specific type of query or something like that. Once again, I'm just going to go back, remove all of that until I get back to where I wanted to. You can count the different rows, which just returns the number of rows in the table. If I click that, it tells you right up here, number 38. Go back again. And yeah, just a whole wealth of different stuff. You can pivot, you can unpivot them. Split we've already went through. Yeah, there's date and time functionality. You can add columns. Yeah, I think the rest of this we'll get into further into the next video when we get into more of a more advanced system. But for now, you've kind of got an idea of how you can clean that data. I'm going to click close and apply up there. It's going to apply those changes, and then it's going to pop up over here, Client Budgets Demo 1. This is the table that we just updated. If I click this, I need to go to my data tab over here, and I click this. There's our data. There's the data that we brought in. It's even sorted the way we had it. It's lovely. So now from here with this data, I'm going to show you how to take the data that we have in these tables here. One more quick tool tip: if you've got a bunch of all these open and you're constantly closing them, if you just close this and reopen it, it'll actually condense them all. So now let's show you how some of these tables would work in the dashboard. So basically you have three sections over here. You've got the presentation area, which is called report, which is what we were just interacting with in the first part of this video. Here you have the data. So let's click on that and have a look. So the data, the fields are over to the right here. You have and these are your tables basically. It's more complex than that. They're not actually all your tables, but that's the easiest way to think about it. So for instance, if I click on my product list, I will see that information here, right? There's my description, there's my sales. If I click on regions, there's that table. But this is much more than just simply a table list. I've created an actual kind of a little hack here, table called key metrics. So I put all of my queries on these tables in here. So let's just, for instance, if I click on total sales here, you'll see at the top here, there is a syntax editor where you can actually type in some code to get the total sales for the report that you are going to demonstrate. Now this code is called DAX, D-A-X. And it's the same query language that is used in Power Query, Power Pivot. So once again, if you're familiar with that, you're going to be very happy because you will easily be able to jump into this. There are a few differences, but for the most part, if you know one, you know the other. And I'm not going to get into this at all, but just to quickly explain to you. So total sales is summing up the sales orders, and the order quantity is the column that it's summing up, and it is multiplying that by the unit price, and that is giving us our total sales. And then this measure, which it is called, can then simply be, I'll even just show you here. I'm just going to create a new page. This total sales measure can be dragged in here, and so this will give us our total sales. And then under the visualizations, this can be adapted and changed. So let's just change this right now. I'll come back to these in a second. I just want to try to stay on topic here. But we can see now from this little total sales measure that I created that our total sales for the entire database are 11 million. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's come back here to our... So these are all of the different, these key metrics. These are all measures that I have created that I want to use when I go back up to this reporting section. So let's maybe talk about the reporting section real quick. So down here on the bottom, there are all the different pages that you can create. You can keep adding to them. My pages are the sales summary, which I showed you earlier, product details, and customer details. Now, these will also be familiar to you. These pages are basically called when I right-click and click on drill through. Customer details here is the same name as this page here. So what this does is this opens customer details, but it sends the customer name to this page here, and then gives you only the information for that. So it's really neat. But let's go to this little page we just created here and maybe just walk through some of the steps and some of the visualizations that you can use. So there are a ton of cool visualizations. You can even import custom visualizations if you're not getting what you want. But I'll show you a couple of them. I'm not going to go through every one of these because that will take a fair bit of time, and I'll cover that in a separate video. But just out of interest here, let's create like a typical pie and see how that works. So right now this pie is blank. I clicked on it and there's nothing in it. over on the right hand side here is the information for this pie chart. So you have the legend, the details that you want in it, the values, any tooltips, any filters that are going to be applied to it. And then here you can actually click the formatting and you can adjust things like title, background color, aspect ratio, borders, etc. Let's go back here. Let's just try adding some information in here. So we'll go to a key measure and we'll add in my total sales. And you'll see here that my total sales, there's basically, it's the same as the number here. So in order to make this of interest, I need to add more information. How do I add more information? I simply, let's close some of these, keep this nice and clean. I simply add in how I want this pie chart to work. It's very intuitive. So let's say I want to go by, let's go by regions, shall we? So let's say, if I select region here, you'll see that now the pie chart has separated by Eastern and Western. Let's turn off region and I can select shortcode. And now I have the provinces in a standard pie chart. And the reason for this interactivity is complex. And I will go into that in other videos as we move through. But the DAX that you write, that DAX code that I talked about a minute ago, and the way that Power BI is set up is it is intelligent enough to know when you go through and add different information like this to create these kind of charts. I'll just show you a couple more real quick ones just so you can get an idea of what's available. There's a standard table chart. Whoops, you were this. You don't want to have it selected, otherwise you'll change it back. So I'm going to unselect. And I'm just going to choose a table chart here. And let's just bring in, not date, let's bring in our customer names. There we go. So now you can see, or can't see because it's so small, but that's good. Let's go over to the formatting and you can have a quick look at that. So in here with this table selected, this formatting is available for it. And I can go in and I can click on, let's say this is too small, I'll just go to values. And then from here, I can adjust the text size. So now you can see the names. I might want to, what do I want to do? I might want to change the font. And I might want to change that font color. And there's an alternate font color. This looks very gaudy. I can go in and I can change my headers. And I can size my headers. Right? You can see really quickly how a lot of this can be changed. I'm just clicking through these so you can kind of have a quick look at to see what's there. You can turn it horizontal, vertical, text size. And change the style. Bold headers, alternating rows with different colors. Flashy. Couple more. Little tree map for you. Tree map is really neat because it shows the size of the data that you are viewing. You get larger squares for the larger amount of data, which is really neat. Let's maybe try, let's go shortcode here again, and let's go to my key metrics, total sales. See? So very different than the pie chart. Well, not really that different, I suppose, but you can, a different way of visualizing the data. And then finally, I've shown you the map in the other piece. This has sort of standard slicers, and slicers are super cool if you haven't used them in Excel. But once again, the idea, and let's add products in here. Product description. So now you've got a little slicer, and you can actually go in, and by selecting this, the different charts will change with what you're interacting with. And you can just basically take all of this, and you can see pretty quickly how you can make something like this into something like this. And before I close, before I close, I want to show you this. If you are familiar with table relationships in any way, if you've used Microsoft Access, this is also available in Excel or any other database system. You'll quickly understand how these relationships work, but I'll run through them for anyone that hasn't. I'm just going to jump back here to data, and we were talking earlier about these tables. Okay, so let me just close. Actually, you can do there. These tables. So we've got regions, we've got sales orders, we've got customer list, right? All of this information. These are all individual tables. When I come back down here to these relationships, you'll see there's the same ones. There's sales orders, there's regions, there's product list. And these are linked by what is called a relationship. And the idea is that this little road from sales orders to client location list allows the data in sales orders and the data that's in client list to speak to each other, to relate. And so when I click on this, let me just expand this a little bit. There, sorry. When I click on this relationship here, you'll see that delivery name and delivery name are the two that are highlighted. So this relationship is between this, and that means that whenever I select some data in sales order, I can also select customer name, and because of this relationship between the two, the charts that we were looking at will automatically populate properly because of this relationship. Okay? Now, Power BI will try to create these relationships for you. You can update them yourselves. I won't, once again, get too far into this because I'll do a separate video just on relationships. But the idea is, if you wanted to create one, you can click on the field and drag it to the table you want to do the relationship to. Or if you already have an established relationship, you can double click on that. And then this will open up a little window, and it will once again show you, here's your delivery name, and here's your delivery name in the sales order table and in the client location list. Let's just move this down or over across. Sales orders, client location, delivery name, and these are highlighted, right? And then the relationship can be a different type. It's called cardinality. Many to one, one to one, one to many. I'm not going to get into this right now. This will be for the next video. But basically, the idea behind it is that some tables will only have the field that you are looking for once. So maybe one will be a table with a list of all of the provinces. It's only in there one time. Whereas the other table, sales orders, will have the province in it many, many times for each individual sales order. In that case, you would have a one-to-many relationship, with a one only being in the client list because it only appears in here one time, whereas there's a many because it appears in the sales orders many times. It gets much more complex than that, so I'm going to leave it there. But you can see how these relationships allow what we created here to take place. If we didn't have these relationships, when I selected information from one table and then I pulled in information from another table, so for instance, here I'm pulling in the information from, and there's a little tooltip, when you select the chart here, it highlights in yellow the fields that you're using. So in this case, when I selected the short code from the regions, okay, and I also pulled in total sales, which comes from the sales order down here, I'm actually grabbing information from regions and from sale orders. Sorry, it keeps jumping around here. It's these two. And if I didn't have a relationship between regions and sale orders, let's go back up here again, then this chart would not work. So that's why those relationships are so important. You have to have this join or this doesn't work. Okay, I think that's enough. I think that's a good enough overview of some of the main features in Power BI. The next thing I'm going to do is start delving into individual features. So I'm going to break down the query editor. I'm going to break down, for instance, just the data tab in and of itself. And then we can, further that we go, we can get into creating calculated columns and measures and using DAX, which is the querying language, to do some advanced functionality. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope it made sense. If it doesn't, if I'm not clear, if something doesn't make sense to you, please ask me in the comments and I will explain it. And it might even change the way that I try to present the videos. Okay, thank you for tuning in and we will see you next week.